Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. It's been just a little bit, but I've been busy. I made a wizard, sort of. It's more like a magical warrior. It's kind of a quality build, mostly intelligence. Mostly because I wanted to wield weapons and use the Ashes of War associated with those weapons. So everything's on screen for you now, you can run it back if you so desire, and I really like this build. If you want to copy this build, and you don't care to use the Royal Greatsword Glides weapon, then you can save a tasty 6 points on strength and put that where you really need it. And if you don't plan on using, say, the Nagakiba or the Bastard Stars, you can also take 2 points out of dexterity, I believe, comfortably, and still have access to, I don't know, the Ritual Death Spear, I think, takes 20 dex. Maybe the Ansper Rapier in a pinch if you're fighting incredibly laggy folks. Neither here nor there. Here, on screen, I'm fighting a duo that had like 300, 350 ping, which is like beyond even Chinese bad internet, or distant internet. With that sort of significant delay, normally the game is quite unplayable, but there's one neat thing about this broken bridge here, and it's this little upraised pedestal you can jump onto. And if you can ever get your enemies in a situation where they aren't rolling for whatever reason, you can do damage, because remember, the infinite iframes or invincibility frames that a player gets when rolling, because their ping is high, doesn't matter if they aren't rolling. And so you can do all sorts of nice things. What I really like about this build, and what usually stands out to me, is the area control. We have Zimwar Ice Storm, in a pinch if we need to hold off a tight space and hit repeatedly. We have Waves of Darkness, which on an int build hits so very hard, and even the Royal Greatsword has a little bit of area denial. It's wonderful. You have so many good AoEs and more you can play with. The Moonlight Greatsword has got those free charged attacks that you can use to really control an area quite well. If you need to hit somebody through a wall, you can have access to the Bastard Stars, and its Ash of War sends out that nebula effect, if you remember, which explodes after a brief delay, and guess what? It goes through walls. It's kind of like the Nox Flowing Hammer for wizards. Comes at a little bit of a dex requirement, kind of hurts a little bit. Sucks having your points in so many directions, but it's not so many that the build is impotent by any means. And I really like it. I think it's not because it's the most effective, but because the weapons and the utility appeals to me. I think this is my favorite kind of build. You can do a little wizardry on the side when you really need it. As you can see, I have Star Shower currently selected, so if I ever really need to get a last hit on somebody, I could pull out a staff, shoot a couple bolts. What are the chances they're going to dodge all 5 or 6 of those bolts, you know? You're going to get a little chip. It's like a fancier throwing knife in some ways. Heck, having an instant, you could use the crystal darts if you really wanted to, but that's neither here nor there. Now, I said I really liked this build, and I do really like this build for my own personal reasons. In terms of effectiveness, I think a pure strength build or a strength build with a smidge of intelligence for those specialty Sombra weapons like the Falling Star Beast Jaw, Ruin's Greatsword, stuff like that, that build might be a little more potent for me in terms of dealing damage, the PvP side of things. But I just like the Magic Warrior. It's cool to me. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to dissect it too much more. I find it cool. I like it neat. We have these really fun moments coming up here where I started with a 3v1. One guy didn't decide to heal, and so Waves of Darkness finished him off through the wall, and now we're trying to get Wolf's Assault to work. It's a tough thing, but one of the neat things about Wolf's Assault on the Royal Greatsword is that it has an extra explosion after the plunge. So you plunge, it explodes, and sure, if you land both parts, it does phenomenal damage, as you just saw, but the explosion can kind of cover your escape. Now, of course, any really good player who has his head screwed on tight, or just has good timing, will be able to punish you after that explosion. It's doable, you're not invincible, but you might punish those who are a little less proficient at the game. So don't rely on it, don't use it too often so people learn its timing, but you can kind of use it in a trade-like situation, though it's hard because it's slow. It's kind of like Lion's Claw, where, you know, it's really good at trading, I would say, It's a little slower than Lion's Claw, honestly. But if you can get that timing just right, you know somebody's really tied up in an animation, you could really punish them. Like, I wonder if somebody were to mistakenly try to cast Great Heal or some of those long incantations, if you could react punish it with the Royal Greatsword's Ash of War. That's something that I would love to look into. But it's expensive. It's a weighty weapon. It's a quality... No, it's a strength int weapon, I believe, that still gets okay scaling from dex. It could be a quality int weapon if I am misremembering it. I should really just pull it up and get my facts straight. But yeah, it looks like when you've upgraded the weapon totally, it has C scaling in int and strength and D scaling in dex. So it gets a little bit from int and strength, of course, and some from int, kind of balanced in that sense. But shifting gears for a moment, one of my favorite things about this build is I adore having the Glintstone Kris as as a main hand swap. Why? I like having basically a Glintstone Comet that can come out very quickly and is fairly economical on the mana. And of course it's a knife too, so you could do the little quick swap if you need to chase somebody down with a knife because they've got just a little bit of HP, or you just need something quick to throw off somebody's timing, or you can shoot a bolt if you think you can punish. It's a good heal punish, it comes out fairly quick. It's not the most forgiving, it's not the best heal punish, but it can be pretty good. I've had more success with, like, offhand casting Lightning Spear as a very fast, intuitive heal punish. But look at this damage. I know he's naked, sure, but we're also not a pure wizard. We don't have 80 int, we only have 60 on this build. And so being able to deal a chunk of damage that makes people think twice just on the quick, it's very nice. Now these people were unfortunately fairly laggy, and I just pulled out the twin spears. I had a moment of weakness, you'll have to forgive me. But that's one of the things you get to do when you have a quality int build, is you get lots of weapons, lots of things you can do, and you can deal with those sweaty 2v2 fights, which is wonderful. I like having an arsenal, I like having options. You can Star Shower to chip people a little bit if you so desire. You don't have a lot of mana, so you should use it sparingly. I try not to cast the same spell more than twice if I can. Mixing up will probably get you more success if you find it's not immediately working. I probably should have just kept going with the spear, but we nick him with the knife there, and the teammate comes in with the short bow shot, or the black bow shot, finishing him off. It was a good little fight. We had a fairly good teammate there. He did a lot more work than I did, I'll tell you that much. But I will say, even though I didn't get too much footage for you today, I feel like some decent footage, some better quality footage than maybe my last few bouts, where I'd have to get a lot of footage and then pick the best from it. I recorded far less for this video. I think part of that is because I made good on what I said last video, where I wanted to go participate in the arena a little bit, you know, 20 to 30 minutes a day, just to kind of keep on top of things, avoid the rust, and maybe work on a few core things. And I did that. I wasn't perfect, I might have missed a day or so, but for the most part I was sticking to it, and I have noticed a slight improvement. Probably only perceptible to me, but still. And it feels good to practice something and to feel a sense of improvement coming from it. I know that my swaps have gotten slightly better, they're still not very good, but what I practiced the most was talisman swaps, which is very common in the arena. A lot of times people go into the arena and they'll have two of their talisman slots be like the Crimson Medallion for extra health, and then the Ritual Shield Talisman, so that that first hit that they take, they have increased defenses, because that's what that talisman does. It gives you increased defenses at full health. And then after they take their first hit of damage, what they'll do is they will swap the Crimson Talisman +2 and the Ritual Shield Talisman to something else. Probably the Bull Goat Talisman, maybe damage or healing talisman of their choice. Very common practice. I'm sure people have their own takes on it. But even just getting in the habit of, oh, I take damage, I swap my talisman, good practice. I got a lot more consistent at that swap and could kind of do it in a bind. Now, when you're in a duel, you can kind of take measure of your opponent and find space and make the swap. If they're very aggressive, it could be difficult, but all in all, there was time for it. Now, in a 3v1 gank or a 2v1 gank, you have two people backing each other up. It can be a little harder to find that time, but it was still something I noticed an improvement in myself. I've always been awful, absolute hogwash at swapping my talismans, so knowing that I've improved upon that a little bit, it's nice for me. It's a little thing. And yes, I understand it's a video game and it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's a hobby and I enjoy it. And I would tell anybody, it's a good-natured fellow, seeking to impart a little advice, find something that you improve upon in your own daily life, whatever it is. Is it a skill you use for work? Is it a hobby? Is it a social skill? Work on something, find something, isolate it if you can, and improve upon it. This little invasion was funny to me, because I showed up, and they were coming down the elevator immediately. I forgot to hit the record button, and I killed the first guy with Zamor Ice Storm, Night Maiden's Mist, and I think Waves of Darkness. I combined the three. I set out Pestilent Mist, and then I used Zamor Ice Storm as they were coming down, and then I swapped to Waves of Darkness when that Ice Storm was going on and lingering for just a minute. And it killed one of them, and then we had that whole elevator sequence, and now we're a whole invasion later, and I'm still talking about it. But those elevator battles are quite silly. I never know exactly what to do, and you kind of have to make your choice and stick to it, because it's one of those do-or-die situations. Kind of like the one that's on screen here. So I noticed that there's that bull goat there, and I noticed he used that high-level intelligence incantation, Law of Regression, to take away my buffs. He's also wearing that big old armor set, and the host is using the dreaded Sleep Halberd, that arcane halberd you can buff with a grease when you need somebody to sleep. And I'm like, well, I have absolutely zero support. It looks like they're a little latent, and so I'm just kind of concocting what to do, kind of looking for a thing to do. I could skirmish with them, sure. I just felt like it wasn't going to end up well, mostly because of that Sleep Halberd. I feel like even if I dodge the hits, if he gets ghost hits, it could be all over in a flash. And so I run out the timer a bit, I get him agitated at me, and I capitalize on the host's anger and hit him with a full-on Waves of Darkness, which thankfully for me hit him for like 1700 damage. I don't think I had the Shard of Alexander on even, which is insane to me that it does 1700 damage if you hit with the whole thing without the Shard of Alexander. That's nuts. Even hitting 1700 damage with the Shard of Alexander, which buffs Ashes of War if you weren't aware, that's a really big number, and I'm reminded every time I play in the meta bracket, somewhere between 125 and 150, the lethality is so high. Everything can die in an instant. Everything does big damage with just a little bit of prep work and a little bit of build planning. Not even a whole lot. You can kind of have a garbage build and still have impressive damage. Your survivability might be awful, but most people when they play an RPG prioritize damage. Why wouldn't you want to see the damage number go up? It's just what people do when they play these games and don't think about it a whole lot. It's not until I've gotten older as a person that I've started prioritizing health. And look at that. I kept that moment in there because it was an anime moment. I gave him a fully charged R2. He hit me with a piercing fang. We traded. We both died simultaneously. I kept it because it was fun. It was so silly. Another thing I've been doing during my repetitious duels for practice is I've been mostly using the Claymore as my primary weapon. And though I didn't showcase a whole lot of Claymore in this video, and I should have showcased more Claymore in the last video that I named the video after, what's wrong with me using the Stormhawk axe so much? What a crutch. Couldn't help it. Does a lot of damage. I really like the Claymore. And I said that last episode, but I feel like I'm getting a little more understanding of it because I've been practicing with it. And I'm not sure if I want it to be a feature of every build, because it's a defensive weapon, it feels like. It has hyper armor. Sure, you can monkey mash and trade with people at point blank and maybe even have a good degree of success with it. But it feels like a weapon that doesn't have a whole lot of chase down potential, and it's really good at punishing very aggressive people. In fact, the way these players were going at it, they were a little more passive than aggressive, and I decided to switch tactics to using the Glintstone Kris, and for some reason, I just kept getting free damage like every other hitter, so it was pretty noticeable. I thought I could space that. That's something I'm also trying to get used to, is phantom range. I learned a little bit more about why it exists. Basically, they're hitting your after image, your ghost of where you were, and the more latency, the farther back that ghost can be before they hit it. That's why when you have really bad latency with somebody, it feels like they're hitting you from a mile away. That's because they're hitting you from 200-300 ms ago, which could be, a third of a second about. And that can change the way a fight feels, totally and completely. So that's something I gotta account for and roll even when it looks like they're not gonna hit. But thanks for joining me on my little magic adventure again today. I want to play more of this guy, and I think I will soon. It's been a good romp. And you better take care of yourself now. I expect to see you in the next video. I mean it. I love having you around. Bye-bye.